East Texan Wes Ferguson is the author of 2 books, Running the River and the Blanco River, and is the creator and host of Standoff, a 10-episode podcast series on the 1974 Houston prison siege. A former staff member of Texas Monthly and Texas Highways magazines, Ferguson was named a 2022 finalist for Writer of the Year at the City and Regional Magazine Awards. In 2020, his article, When Angels in America Came to East Texas, was a finalist for a National Magazine Award in feature writing. Ferguson is a member of the Texas Institute of Letters. He grew up near Kilgore and lives south of Austin with his wife Laura and their many plants. When Wes emailed me about his selection, The Campfire, he was concerned that it might not be exciting enough. And my reply to him was, Campfires is in the subtitle of this event. Campfires, chili con carne, in the words of J. Frank Dobie. Because if it weren't for campfires, Dobie wouldn't have gathered a lot of the stories that he did. And before that, though, he would not have realized his life's calling around that campfire on his uncle Jim Dobie's LaSalle County ranch, listening to the old vaquero Santos Cortez telling those stories. If it weren't for sitting around that campfire, he might not have realized that it was important to collect and preserve those stories of Texas and the Southwest. And we wouldn't be here celebrating him tonight. So with that, I present to you Mr. Wes Ferguson.
Thank you. Hey, y'all. This is really neat. Been wanting to come for a lot of years, and this is the first time I've actually been here, so thank you so much for having me. So I'm reading The Campfire, and it's from the Essential J. Frank Dobie, a collection edited by my friend Steve Davis, who is a scholar on Dobie and is usually here. The Campfire. I like the campfire when it is blazing, and I like the last dim glow of its embers. I like talk by it, and I like silence beside it. It makes company more companionable, and it makes solitude richer. I remember certain campfires as I remember certain faces, certain friends, certain experiences that make human sympathies glow. The earliest specific campfire I recall was late in the year 1897. I was toward 3 months beyond my 9th birthday. My uncle, Jim Dobie, had contracted to buy around 415 head of stock cattle, and he took me along with a wagon and several vaqueros to receive the cattle and drive them to our ranch, between 2 and 3 days' travel by cloven hooves to the south. Before we got to the ranch, a cold, wet norther hit us. Everybody got shivering wet, and we made camps in a thicket of heavy brush and trees. In those days, in that part of the world, many things were homemade. Mexicanos on the ranches lived in jacales thatched over with bear grass. Some of the men wore rawhide chivarros, leggings, now often called chaps. The hair turned in. When rawhide got thoroughly wet, it becomes as limp as a wet dish rag. When it dries, it sets as stiff as a board. One young man with us who wore rawhide leggings went to drying them by the campfire. The rain had quit falling, and we were all feeling mighty cheerful from the warmth and glow of blazing mesquite wood. I guess this vaquero didn't pay much attention to the drying process. He was quite loquacious, and after we had filled up on hot bread out of a Dutch oven, a pot of frijoles with plenty of bacon in it that had been brought along already cooked, and sorghum molasses, the young vaquero noticed his leggings. They were as dry and stiff as a pair of stovepipes. He stood them up in front of him, and there, in a theater of earth and firelight, extemporized a kind of play. He talked to them and had them talk back to him. Everybody was laughing. I have no recollection whatsoever of anything that was said. I only remember the bright fire, its wonderful warmth after the cold and wet. Here's a word I had to practice about 4 times today. And the colloquy between fire-flushed vaquero and fire-hardened rawhide leggings standing up empty in front of him. Many years later, over a considerable period of time, I made various pack trips mostly alone except for a mozo, across the Sierra Madre and winding around through the mountains of western Mexico. I had to look up mozo also, that's a servant. I can look back on myself at certain campfires on those trips as another man. After riding all day in the cold without seeing a human being or a fence, he makes camp behind a windbreak of trees. A creek of clear water flanks it on one side and a glade of matted mesquite grass on the other. After watering and hobbling their horses and pack mules, the man and his mozo build a fire, wash hands, faces, roast a side of fat venison ribs, and eat most of them. The mozo rolls into his pallet. The man puts fresh wood on the coals and sits down where the warmth comes steady and there is no smoke. He fills his pipe and smokes it, looking into the fire. He is comfortable inside and out. The sound of the wind, only moderately high, in the branches adds to his feeling of being an unstriving master of time and of being in place, without ambition to turn the place into capital gain. The coyotes, smelling the cooked meat and serenading the cold moon, talk to him also. They seem to go with the fire. The man's mind tracks back to many things, to love, to his childhood hearth, to action, to illuminations out of literature, to good companions. Thoughts come to him on subjects far remote from the life he is leading, yet nothing seems remote to the light and the warmth of the fire. He spreads his hands before it, not because they are cold, but out of geniality. He remembers with understanding the ancient Persians who worshipped fire. He feels thankful to the unknown for wood and the mystery of its burning. He gets up to put on more wood and stands with back to the blaze. He looks out to the shadows rising and falling on a tree trunk by which his pallet has been spread. The silent play of shadows from the fire, silent except for now and then a hardly perceptible pop when a coal cracks, makes his mind more active without marring serenity. The activity is comfortable in the way of the sound of his horse cropping grass just beyond the tree is. He turns back to the fire. He has known good company, good talk, but none better than this. Yet recalling good talk by other fires, he wishes a certain person, maybe 2 or 3 certain persons, were here now, perhaps to talk, perhaps to be silent, certainly to be genial with the fire. At the same time, he is glad to be alone. The whole man is composed of many parts. He has time and again been burned by fire. He has seen fire released from the air consume cities and has traveled over a nation devastated by it. He has seen it annihilate a family's all in less time than it takes to be born. He knows nothing more awful than fire can be. But he is so in harmony with the little campfire that he seems to himself to be a part of it, as he is a mere particle of the elements that according to the ancients consisted of earth, air, water, and fire. Many hunters nowadays lodge in hotels and tourist camps in the vicinity of hunting grounds. They get their nightly hot baths, sit in chairs at a table, and order from banal menus, and may kill just as much as if they were camping out. But to my taste, they miss more than half the pleasure and recreation that belongs with a hunt. I remember one campfire in the desert of Sonora, against the Gulf of California, where I sat on the vertebra of a whale that had been dragged out of the surf by Indians. Old King Cole had not a more comfortable chair. Another camp in desert country of Chihuahua, where we had a hard time boiling coffee with nothing but stems of weeds for fuel, while the unremitting wind blew too much sand to make sitting on the ground bearable, makes in memory a brighter lodging than any room in any New York hotel where I have lodged. Mere comfort without geniality is never memorable. Many times I have fallen into remembering a before daylight visit a long time ago with Mexicano hands at the Abras Ranch out from Cotulla. Beside their bunk cabin, they had for kitchen and dining room an unroofed corral of tightly wedged mesquite pickets. They were sitting on chunks of wood or standing about the fire in this kitchen corral, drinking coffee when I drove up. I guess the coyotes had been listening to the car. As soon as I stopped and went to the fire, they opened up. After the first few low words of greeting, nobody was saying anything. The day before, I had been hunting on the old Olmos Ranch, 25 miles or so down the Nueces River. While riding horseback, I had come upon a patch of greasewood, also known as Gobernador, on a ridge out from the river on the south side. I like to smell greasewood, especially after a rain, and especially the incense from its burning. I had broken off 3 or 4 leafy sprigs and put them in a pocket of the ducking jacket I wore. Now, beside the fire, I pulled the sprigs out and pitched them on the coals. They are rich in oil, and they burned brightly, the strong, pungent odor pervading the air. One of the Mexicanos silent there was old Jacinto de los Santos, which name literally translated means hyacinth of the saints. He looked no more like a hyacinth than I look sweet 16. He was puro indio in blood. His features were solemn and sad, and when he spoke, the words seemed to come from deep down in his strong frame. He was more fence builder and tanker than vaquero. He could have told you how many strands of barbed wire were stapled to posts fencing in 40 or 50 big pastures. He was as much of the campo as any keen-scented wild thing that ranged in it. He and 2 of his boys, both superb vaqueros, squatted by while the burning greasewood scented the air. "You have been to Los Olmos?" Jacinto de los Santos stated. "There is where we had come to know each other years back." "Yes. The Gobernador grows on the long ridge across the river from the Olmos Ranch house," one of the boys said. "Yes," Jacinto nodded solemnly. "And there is another patch north of La Mota." Then followed minute directions to this other patch not far from the relics of a sheep pen that began falling down before the stage from San Antonio to Laredo quit running. Presumably no other greasewood grew in an area of several 100,000 acres of land in that country. I am sitting alone in the cold dawning by my campfire. I have old Jacinto de los Santos for company. He was honest and kind, but if there be a company of saints in some ethereal region of the universe, I doubt his being with them. He ceased to be here on earth long ago. My imagination is limited, and I can't imagine any place of disembodied spirits where Jacinto de los Santos would be as much in place as at a ranch campfire before daylight in a vast land where he knew every trail, every fence gap, every particular patch of greasewood, ceniza, coma, palo verde, and dozens of other thorn species belonging to the arid soil in which he was rooted. If I can't have as company one who belongs to the ground on which a campfire flickers, the fire itself is sufficient to make me feel ample. Thank you.
if you ever hear my name. I'm down here by Mexico where the Rio Bravo flows, and I'm riding high and up to mine. I'm here where the eagle flies, let the world pass me by, and I